Okay, so we're in the Q&A for ownership. Welcome, Engineered Clarity community, EC2. So the reason I think EC2 is so powerful is because it's we go deeper into a concept, and so how do we become awakened, like almost on cue, and then the power and the importance of ownership. And then we did a great session, yesterday with Alan on work. And then there's, an unbelievable session, and there's white papers on all of these, and or will be white papers, and or a whole bunch of other things. So, Paul, I'm interested in your story about taking ownership.
Well, it's not, well, I'll get to that in a second, because we were talking about the community, Engineered Clarity, and what is so remarkable about this community, when you talk about internalization, it kind of makes me remember a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, Jill or Nicole, I don't remember who was talking about it, but they used a great analogy. And so some of these concepts, like the storytelling, the way they encapsulated the concept of, a lot of people ask, what does internalization mean? And the way she connected those dots was, it's kind of like taking your personal story and using your story to fill in those blanks. And that really kind of a goosebump moment, kind of as it was. And so you just get so much just great feedback in the community, and all of these concepts and ideas, they just start tying into each other on so many different levels. So the ownership piece, I thought that, I was awesome at coming up with a billion reasons of why I couldn't get something done or couldn't make a call, and a lot of this stuff had to do with you. And I ran a minute late, and sorry, and this happened and that happened. And, I thought on a level short term that was kind of interesting. And it kind of felt, I had this little bit of relief. Oh my God, I've got took my excuses out of my little excuse bag, and it was a pretty big bag. It was a good overnight bag. And then what I realized is that when I started taking ownership, and it's like, I've got nothing, Mark, it won't happen again. And then what I started realizing is that if I managed my time better, and I showed up 2 minutes before a call, then 3 minutes before a call, and started to own my time, and then own and responsible for your time, I then, for the first time ever, became truly empowered. And, I'm giving myself my own goosebumps. Wow. That was enlightening. That was really empowerment when I took responsibility and accountability for owning my time and everybody else's time, because they didn't have to wait on me. I was there, present for the moment. And then one of the coolest things ever, when I did Action Vision, and Action Vision, for those of you who don't know, was one-on-one coaching through Synergy Solutions. And the concept was pretty simple. So the coaching, so you had a bunch of goals, actions that needed to be accomplished daily, weekly, monthly. You reported to your coach. You reported to somebody, and then the third person you had to be accountable, and accountability was such a huge piece of this, was a very significant other. So it could have been, a life partner, wife. Mine at the time was my wife. And it was one thing to tell Mark, I didn't do it. I did not commit to, making 3 outbound calls that day, 4 days a week. It was a completely different thing when I had to tell my wife the reason I did not make my income goals was because I just couldn't get around to it. So when you talk about accountability and have to look across the table at, in that case, my wife, and look her in the eye and tell her just didn't feel like it, game changer when you put that kind of accountability on, which translated to ownership. Wow. First and last time I had that conversation with her. So when you really understand what accountability translated to ownership can do for you, it can move mountains. So,
Nicole, you're taking up leadership and ownership of all of Tanglewood, all the different pieces. You're a young woman, recently out of college. A lot of people that have a lot more experience. What does ownership mean to you, and how's that process, Nicole, coming along?
Well, ownership to me is not only taking, you said, a simple version of ownership is own your stuff. I think that's one level. That's your bare bone. I think ownership at a deep level is really taking ownership of yourself, your actions, the actions of your department to a degree, and then the actions of your entire company that you work for to a degree. Not saying take full ownership that happens in the entire company, but you take a part of that ownership. And what's starting in Tanglewood is introducing this concept to people and putting together and really defining what is ownership, what does it look like, and how do I get there. Those are the next phases of where we're going. Because ultimately,
so 1 to 10, how are Nancy, Alan, and Nancy rating you on ownership?
I'm not sure yet. We haven't had the conversation yet.
Why not?
I don't know.
Anybody know why Nicole hasn't had that, conversation yet?
She hasn't initiated it.
Why?
Maybe she's afraid of the answer.
Could be fear. Okay, good. Why else?
She feels that they should do it themselves.
Okay, so somebody else, they can approach her. Good. Why else?
I didn't think to ask them.
Okay. So a lack of awareness, a lack of knowledge, hasn't been coached or mentored in that. Anyone have any ideas?
Not a planned event?
Not a planned event? Yep. Or scheduled event. Any ideas as to how Rosanna was so quick on the response, faster than others?
Probably because I'm the same way.
Okay. So Rosanna's projecting on to Nicole. Maybe she doesn't do things because she's afraid. And so often we project onto other people what's, our own. Maybe Rosanna's got a husband that, is pretty big on this and really strong and, talks about this a lot. How do we take ownership of the things? How do we take proper ownership? Nicole, I would say that you take 100% ownership, but part of that ownership is helping other people to take ownership of their stuff. And that's, I think, is really hard to be able to do. So in the pre and the post. So this is where participating in the live, there's things in the pre and the post, before the recording and after the recording, that if you're not participating in a live community on a weekly basis, at least for 30 minutes, there's 10,080 minutes in a week. Trust me, you have 30 minutes out of the 10,080. If you don't have 30 minutes, well, then you have to do it. It's even more important to you. So we talked on the pre. So Rosanna is my wife of 35 years. We have, again, 7 children, 5 grandchildren, 3 sons-in-laws, a daughter-in-law, ever-expanding family. And so I'd ask, so we're looking at ownership here. We're looking at ownership here, but we jumped over to care before, and I said, who cares about Rosanna? And a number of people said they care. Paul and Nicole jumped in, and I said, they said they cared, and I said, what have you done, for Rosanna? And they both said nothing, and I said, I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn how to say that I care and to care without doing anything. And so this weekend, when I did journaling, I went ahead and came up with a white paper, and it took me 10 hours probably this weekend to write the white paper on caring. Now, I've been after parts of this white paper for over a decade to try to come up with dimensional, like, how do you measure it? So I was successful this weekend on coming up with it. It's a very simple model. And so this is going to be transferred over into, so caring model comes up with two things, work and ownership. It's connected into it. Quadrant 1 is caring for yourself, learning to care for ourselves. Quadrant 2 is caring for ourselves and a few others. Quadrant 3 is learning to care for groups of people. And quadrant 4 is learning to care for total strangers. Now, I don't know what's going to be on the two. Probably ownership is an awakening. And then it's care. Probably. That's pretty cool. Anyways, just thought of that. Here's the dimensional stuff that it just blew my mind. Like, I'm like, you got to be kidding. Like, this stuff is so cool. So here are 10 levels of caring. So the same model can be used for ownership. So level 1 is caring, we're born. It's all about us and only us. That's all we care about. Level 2 is me plus one other person. We realize we have a mom. Level 3 is me and more. We have siblings, friends, and others. Number 4 is me and a group. We belong to a group of people. Level 5 is serving the group has more value than me. Most people probably never get past level 3 and 4. Level 6 is others. These are people we are somehow connected with. Like, we're taking ownership, we're caring about them. Strangers who are close, these are people we may not connect with. Strangers who are far, we probably will never meet these people. 9 is 7.4 plus billion people in the world, and legacy is how do we care for others like we do our own loved ones. So how do I care for all the kids in the world as if they were my own grandchildren? So this ownership, now that we've got the caring model, now we can apply it to ownership. Now if we apply this to, and Nicole, do you have to take off?
I've got about 10 minutes.
Okay. So if we go ahead and apply this to quantum thinking and the psychology of people and the December 11th event and the San Antonio event, now all of a sudden, whoa. So Elise, first time you saw this, what did you think of? Does everybody hear that energy? It's like she was speechless, like she was awestruck. It's like the Mona Lisa. It's like artistry, like this kind of stuff. It's like, how do you even use words to describe it? Matthew, have you seen, this system? It's called GTing it. So it's the application of the DNA for business, and it's going into the 530 grid, and it's taking here where you go ahead and go down into GTing it. So it's taking these 6 things and applying them. Elise was so awestruck, I need to give her just a little time to go ahead and, get herself composed and together because she's just so moved. It's like tears probably almost came to her eyes. She's like, I don't know who put this together, but, whoever it was, they're a genius. Like, man. Matthew, your thoughts or questions on anything as it relates to ownership? So, Matt, go ahead.
I've struggled at times with ownership, and over the years it's been similar to Paul, where it's like you don't really see things, and you're missing things, and then you have this aha moment where it's like, wow, it just hits you like a 10-ton truck, and it's just like I really need to shape up. I need to start taking control of things. I need to start taking ownership over, like Paul said, it's not just my time. It's other people's time. You need to make sure that you are on top of contacting people back. Because, if they send you an email and you don't respond, you also cost them time and not only you time. And so I have been learning over all these years, I need to be, like Paul said, I need to not only take ownership of my time and what I do and how I spend time, but I have to also make sure that I'm taking ownership of how much time that I am taking of others so that I can make it, I can be profitable, they can be profitable, and we can all make better decisions and better choices.
Because the psychology of people, is it like not the most awesome thing? like it came up with quantum thinking. It expanded it out to awakening, ownership, work, and care. And when we really understand this and helping everybody around us to be awakened on their own without us having to do it, to take ownership without us having to point to them and say, you take ownership, to helping them to see how to work, not just just physical work, but there's 8 different intelligences that came up within caring. And so 1 is academic intelligence, 2 is relational intelligence, 3 is financial, 4 is social, 5 is spiritual, 6 is spiritual, 7 is emotional, and 8 is career intelligence. And so often we excel in 1 or 2 or 3 intelligences, but then we are sloppy, lazy, and disciplined and pathetic in other intelligences, and that hurts us in life. Nicole, I know you need to take off. Any closing comments, thoughts that you have before you take off?
I am so excited that you shared the caring model today. That was like the biggest eye-opening for me, and I'm really excited about ownership. And I am going to ask them that question today.
Cool.
I'll ask them today and manage up and out.
See, I learned that in growing up where my oldest brother, he's a CPA. I'm not. Again, I want to repeat, I'm not saying all CPAs are like this. I am not saying this. I'm just saying my brother, he's a CPA. He's the oldest, very analytic. And he doesn't seem to remember, childhood memories so much. And I remember growing up, even when he was a child, he didn't remember them. And he wasn't abused. He just, I don't know, that's just kind of how his brain was wired or something. I remember thinking, my gracious, yeah, boy, I want my kids to remember certain things. So what I did throughout all 7 of the kids, I would ask them, 1 to 10, how would you rate me as a dad, 1 to 10? And my youngest son, he went ahead and when he was 17, I think, I asked him, and he said, I think it's 7 or something like that, 6 or 7. I said, okay, what would it take to get to a 10? And he said, not to not tell me I'm lazy. I'm still sorting that out. That was a couple years ago, and I still haven't figured out, that whole thing, but I'm working through it. So, Nicole, being exposed to people who are a few decades older, really getting into their childhood, what they learned, the models. What you can do is you accelerate. I remember when I turned 40, so I'm 55 now. I remember when I turned 40, I said, man, I wish I knew at 20 what I knew at 40. And then I said,
Now I've got an insight.
And so now I said, I bet you when I turn 60, I'm going to wish I knew at 40 what I know at 60. So that's how I got introduced to Tom, is I put out intention and said, I'm going to meet people that are 20 years older than me, and I'm going to continue to tap into their life and saying, when you were, so now I want to work with people that are 75 and say, when you were 55, what do you wish you knew at 55 that you now know at 75? So when we go ahead and tap into others, it's amazing what happens. Thanks, Nicole. You're amazing. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye. Rosanna, thoughts you have?
Well, since I didn't actually see the curing model set today, I think that's just amazing. I think it's cool to break it down the way you did, and it's so true. So that's where I'm at.
Right, and it's like, the same thing can be true, I think, for ownerships. I can't wait. It's like, I can't wait for the ownership, to go ahead and come into play, to be able to look at this. And so the first 5 pages, they're open for anybody, just like the first, 7 to 10 minutes of this. You can share it with anybody. But the full Q&A, like we had now, that's only available to people who are part of EC2. So if somebody's not willing to invest $20 a month back into themselves and their own development, you know what? When they hit that Q&A time, they're probably going to be like, that's a lot of work. Like, I don't know. That's a lot of thinking. But if you're investing $20 a month, you're like, I want to get my $20 value. So it goes through, and the first 5 pages are very intriguing, very interesting. But and they ask some great questions, and then they give some really cool things based on personality. And then they give the simple caring model, which says like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But then when you get into the Q&A and you start drilling down in deeper into this stuff and start looking at this and saying, whoa, that is really, really neat. So there's a question that came up that'll go into this model, the caring model, and say, can I care for somebody without work into their life? And so, like, they're really profound, deep questions that you think, well, no, or yes, but it's not yes or no. It's like in the quantum world, it's not linear. And so, you start getting into, like, and really peeling apart this onion and starting to look at it and say, holy smokes, there's a lot. This really does go deep into understanding how to bring healing in all areas. Like, I know of individuals who have been abused as children and or been hurt by physical, emotional, sexual abuse, and how they've taken ownership of that. Don't have the model here, but that'd be a great one to ask about in a mastermind group. Is the magic atomic ball principle. Is when you've been sexually abused by someone else, how do you take ownership of that? And so if we don't take ownership, what we're doing is we're giving up control to somebody else, often the abuser. And so when we take ownership of stuff, we gain control. It is painful in the short term, but it's a good pain. It's like a healing pain that can heal people almost instantly. Here's something that's really cool. So here's something on the disorders. based on the personality. So the analytic will often have disorders of pride, dissociation, major depression, bipolar, and I can't even say that last one, dysesmia or something. The fear for the amiable is often panic attack, passive-aggressive, stress, post-traumatic, PTSD, anxiety, and social phobias. The driver personality often has disorders of defiant, poor conduct, disruptive, sexual disorders, oppositional, physical abuse, and the expressive often has the narcissism, ADD, ADHD, addictions, explosive drama, eating disorders, obsessive compulsive, and it breaks down into kind of the core. For the expressive is foolishness, for the driver is anger, for the analytic is despair, and for the amiable is fear. So again, this is something that Edward Revere and I have been working on for a long time, and I've been looking at, I've got models of the heart and healing that go back decades on how do we get to the heart, the core of a situation, and bring healing at a core level. All right, Paul, Matthew, Rosanna, anything else that you guys have?
I don't know.
This, like this model, kind of interesting. There is a whole lot of work now being done with depression and mind-body, and this stuff is all it's absolutely amazing to me because it's all related at the, you said it, at the core level of your brain, and you have control, and it is about, really, in the end, it's about you taking control of your pain. So it's loop me into those conversations if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Matthew,
I really like the model. Yeah, because, it's ultimately the more we understand about ourselves and the more that we understand about others is the more that we can then do to take control of the situation. Because, if you are plopped down in the middle of inner city New York, you have no idea where you're at. And that is a lot the same as understanding where, if you have traumatic experiences, understanding where to start. And so by understanding different things about ourselves and others, we can then start that roadmap to healing, that roadmap to finally figuring out what's truly underneath it all and how can we then heal that so that we can then move forward.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know, it's just amazing as the things that are coming out of EC2 and how collaborative we're all bringing these different thoughts and ideas together for the mutual benefit of everybody. It's really cool. Elise, any closing thoughts, comments you have?
No, I mean, I think just overall this concept is life-changing and business-changing, straight down from the owner of a company to its team members and how they each can take, higher ownership, have greater success, and reach their goals. Yeah. Very neat. Seemed like there was one other thing. If you guys want to stay around for a couple more minutes afterwards, we'll talk a little bit about the psychology of people, free webinar, and then the San Antonio and the other, mastermind seminar events that are coming up around the country and the world. And how do we take ownership of that ourselves, and then how do we go ahead and do that, for other people? How do we help other people take more and more ownership of their lives? As parents, that's what we want to do, because that's successful parenting. As entrepreneurs, that's what we have to do,
Because if we don't learn how to do that, we'll never get our business to work without us. BWWM, Business Working Without Me, great mastermind group. Like, that'll never happen. If we don't get people to progressively take more and more ownership, it will never, ever happen. So if you have any questions on anything we covered, connect with your art buddy. That's your first point. So that's connect with your art buddy, your art mentor. But the two art buddies, that's where you're going to learn a lot more from, actually, because you're helping them to understand something, and in helping them to understand something, you're going to understand more as well. And then if you want to take this and say, hey, I want another revenue stream, I want to start my own company, if I want to go ahead and, take my intellectual property, my story, and I want to turn learning into earning, then check out, learn2earn.dna4success.com. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.